Hello, and welcome to the deep dive here on Westferry Times. Today, we're going to delve into something quite significant that happened recently in Glasgow. We're talking about a trans rights protest. This was on May 26th, 2025. Now, this demonstration, it involved a confrontation with police and ultimately led to some arrests. So it's raised some really important questions. What actually sparked this protest? And maybe what does it tell us about the wider conversation on gender rights here in the UK?
Yeah, those are definitely the key questions. And the events in Glasgow, they really give us a vivid snapshot of the ongoing tensions. These are complex issues.
hmm And to help us sort of navigate this and really understand the nuances, we're joined today by Dr. Liam Fraser. Dr. Fraser is a sociologist specializing in gender studies and also protest movements. Thank you so much for joining us for this deep dive.
It's good to be here. Happy to contribute to this important discussion.
Great. So maybe you could start by painting a clearer picture for us. What exactly happened during this protest on the 26th? What were the key moments?
Certainly. So it was the morning of May 26th, around 10:15 a.m. A group of activists advocating for trans rights. They gathered at the Equality and Human Rights Commission offices. That's the EHRC.
Right, on West George Street in Glasgow.
Exactly. And the demonstration, well, took a more direct turn. Several activists actually climbed onto the building's balcony.
Onto the balcony itself.
Yes. And they displayed a banner. And the message on it was quite pointed. It read, "End segregation, trans liberation."
Okay. And what was the immediate reaction? How did authorities respond to that?
Well, Police Scotland responded pretty quickly, actually. They set up a cordon around the EHRC offices.
Which I imagine caused some disruption, being right in the city center.
Well, absolutely.
Yeah.
Given the location, it resulted in considerable disruption, both the traffic and just the general flow of things in the city center for a while that morning.
Right. And that kind of disruption often brings more attention, doesn't it?
It often does, yes.
Yeah.
It amplifies the visibility.
And I understand things escalated to arrests. What can you tell us about that?
Yes. Unfortunately, arrests were made. In total, 6 individuals were taken into police custody.
6 people. Okay.
And their ages, they varied quite a bit. 3 were 17-year-olds.
Very young.
Yes. 1 was 18, and then 2 were 32 years old. And there was a separate incident, too. A 25-year-old man was charged with assault in connection with the protest. He's due in court later.
Okay. Were there any reports of injuries to the protesters or the police?
According to the official statements released, no. No injuries were reported from the protest itself or the police actions.
Okay.
But as we mentioned, the impact on the city center's daily life, that was definitely significant for a time.
Okay, so let's really dig into the core of this. Why the EHRC offices specifically? What were the underlying issues driving this protest?
Right. The choice of the EHRC is, well, it's very telling. It connects directly to some really significant recent shifts in the legal and social understanding of gender here in the UK. A primary catalyst was a recent ruling by the UK Supreme Court. This ruling, it provided a clarification on how the term woman should be interpreted, specifically within the Equality Act 2010.
And what was that clarification?
Critically, the Supreme Court clarified that in this specific legal context, woman refers specifically to biological sex.
Okay, let's maybe unpack that a bit more. What are the practical implications of defining woman legally as biological sex under the Equality Act? What does that mean day to day?
Well, the implications are potentially quite far-reaching, especially for transgender individuals and particularly trans women. This ruling directly affects their ability to access spaces and services designated as female only.
Right.
And then, following this court decision, the EHRC issued its own guidance. And this is really where the major point of contention comes in.
Ah, the guidance that followed the ruling.
Yes. This guidance essentially indicated that it could be justifiable, legally speaking, to exclude trans women from these female-only spaces and services.
And I'm guessing that guidance didn't sit well with the activists.
Not at all. Many trans rights activists saw this guidance as, well, discriminatory. Plain and simple. Their argument is that it basically validates segregation and exclusion, that it undermines their fundamental rights, their identity.
So that feeling of being targeted by the EHRC guidance was a key motivator.
A very significant driving force, yes, behind the decision to protest right there.
And we understand a specific group claimed responsibility for organizing it.
Yes, the group that identified themselves as the organizers is called Trans Kids Deserve Better Scotland.
Okay.
Their advocacy work tends to focus on a range of trans rights issues, but especially ensuring young trans people have access to gender-affirming care and are protected from discrimination.
So this Supreme Court ruling, it really seems to have shifted the ground quite a bit for transgender rights in the UK. How does it impact the wider legal framework?
It certainly does. The ruling essentially reinforces a more, let's say, traditional or restrictive interpretation of sex within a really crucial piece of anti-discrimination law.
The Equality Act being that key piece.
Exactly. By tying sex so firmly to biological definitions in that context, it creates a potential legal pathway for, well, different treatment of transgender individuals, particularly where sex is listed as a protected characteristic.
And that potential for different treatment is what's raising alarms for human rights groups, correct?
Precisely. These organizations have voiced serious concerns that the ruling could, unfortunately, lead to more discrimination against trans people and maybe a general weakening of the legal protections they currently have.
So the worry is it becomes easier to legally justify exclusion.
That's the concern, yes.
Hmm.
Excluding trans individuals from spaces, services, maybe even opportunities based on sex assigned at birth, rather than their lived gender identity.
Okay, turning to the broader reaction, like public, political.
Right.
What have we seen in response to the ruling and the protests? These issues tend to evoke strong feelings.
You're absolutely right. The reactions have been quite mixed
Hmm.
and often deeply felt. On one side, you have some feminist groups and certain politicians, too, who've actually supported the Supreme Court ruling.
And their perspective is?
Their view is that it provides needed clarity on the definition of woman and safeguards what they see as rights and protections specifically for biological females.
Okay. And the other side of that coin.
On the other side, LGBTQ plus advocacy groups and their allies, they've been extremely critical. They argue it's a major step backward for trans rights, that it undermines the dignity and, fundamental equality of trans people by not affirming their lived identity.
Right.
And the protest in Glasgow, well, it really just amplified these existing tensions, didn't it? Brought the whole debate into sharper focus, sparked broader discussions about what inclusivity and equality really mean in practice.
It really does feel like a pivotal moment. So looking ahead, what are the potential paths forward? How can the concerns of the trans community be addressed while, also considering these legal interpretations? It seems like a very delicate balance.
It is. It's incredibly delicate. And finding a way forward, it's likely going to need a comprehensive approach. Several things together.
Like what, for example?
Well, one essential piece is fostering open dialogue. Honest, respectful dialogue. That needs to involve everyone with a stake in this. Trans people, advocacy groups, legal experts, policymakers, and importantly, even those with different views. Creating spaces for genuine listening is just crucial.
Beyond just talking, though, what about more concrete steps?
Policymakers have a really significant role, obviously. Working closely with trans advocacy groups seems vital to make sure any future laws or guidance truly consider the lived experiences and needs of the community.
So aiming for genuinely inclusive protection.
That should be the goal, yes, while navigating the existing, sometimes complex, legal frameworks. And also, we shouldn't forget the role of education, awareness campaigns. Helping foster more understanding in wider society can really help reduce prejudice.
That makes sense. Finally, then, considering the protests we saw,
Mm.
do you expect more activism? Maybe more demonstrations or perhaps further legal challenges down the line?
Given the current climate, socially and politically, and the deeply held beliefs on all sides, I think it's, yes, highly probable that activism will continue.
In what forms do you think?
It could definitely manifest in various ways. More public demonstrations, certainly, to raise awareness and pressure policymakers. But we might also very well see more legal challenges as the trans community and allies keep seeking clarification, maybe trying to overturn aspects of the ruling or how it's being interpreted.
So the determination is strong.
Very strong, yes. The determination to advocate for equal rights, for robust protections, I'd expect those efforts to continue until more substantive, genuinely inclusive changes are achieved.
Well, thank you so much for sharing your expertise on this. It's a really important and clearly still evolving story. Your insights have been incredibly helpful in understanding the complexities.
Thank you. It's definitely a conversation that needs to keep happening.
Absolutely. And as our society continues to grapple with these fundamental questions about identity, rights, inclusion, it's just so important for all of us to stay informed, stay engaged. We here at the Deep Dive on Westferry Times will certainly keep following these developments and bring you any significant updates. Thank you so much for joining us for this deep dive. Until next time, take care and stay informed.